Hey there, it's Julia Burnett, your Senior National Sales Director. I want to welcome you to our GenX call for the month of June. Now, obviously, this is a video, but we're trying out something new this month. And I want to first say thank you for your time and getting on. I hope that there's something of great value that you take away from this this time to connect. The second thing I want to say is before we do recognition and go into training, I want to tell you something really big coming up. We have this incredible promotion in our area called hashtag 130 Reds Best Seminar. And what's exciting to me about the red jacket position is it's not really about the actual red jacket. It's not even about the title. What it's really about is who you become along the way. And that's what is important to me, that we build holistic women who are, and a few good men, right, who are really well-rounded and who are becoming leaders in their own right. And I know that when you become a leader in Mary Kay, then that spills over into all other areas of your life. I think you become a better worker at your other job. I think you can become a better mother, a better neighbor, a better friend, a better child of God when you learn to develop those leadership skills inside of you. And so I think that one great thing that we do in Mary Kay really well is we give you a track to run on that helps to develop those skills. So I want you to see your run to red, or your run to move up in red, is really not about the title or about what you get from it. It's really much more about who you become along the way. And so what we're going to do at seminar is we're going to celebrate you really, really big. In fact, so big, we're going to have a big stage for you at our seminar pre-party where we're going to debut you, complete with a video with your pictures in it, complete with your sales director affirming you in front of a lot of people, complete with some VIP gifts, and basically we're going to get together in my suite. I'm going to have a little mini reception before the Mary Kay pre-party, so I'll get the opportunity to get to know you better, and so we can connect and bond as a group. And so I'm so excited about all these fantastic opportunities to get to meet and connect with you. And I really want to meet and get to know those in our area who are really eager and hungry to move up the career path, to be their very best self, and to put yourself on the line. And so I just wanted to tell you that it's really worth working for. It'll be whatever your career path title was on April 1st, and then wherever you end on June 30th. So if you've never been in red, then it would be getting into red. Can you find 3 people on your team to get active? If you've ever been in red before, you pretty much got to move up to team leader, which is 5 actives on your team. And so, and if you already were in red on April 1st, you just got to move up to team leader. So from 3 to 5. If you're a team leader at 5, you got to move up to future director at 8. And if you're in DIQ, you just got to move through DIQ, move one more month along in the DIQ process, or debut as a sales director. So I'm really excited about all this and just want to kind of put it out there. Next, I want to do some recognition for those of you who really worked last month in the month of May. Let me pull up that recognition and read it off to you, and then we'll do some training on what it looks like to finish strong. So we've got Lindsay Bonta leading by example, completing GenX. Amanda Bowden leading by example, doing GenX Elite, hitting a bronze medal, which is adding 3 new personal team members in 1 month. And she started the month off strong with a book 14. So Amanda, high five. Wow. All right, Chelsea Burling leading by example with a book 10. And then Ashley Mack in Chelsea's unit not only has a book 10, but she moved along from month 3 DIQ to her final month of DIQ, and Ashley earned the use of her first free card in Mary Kay. What I think is cool about that is Ashley has quite a story. A couple days before the end of the month, she had like 200 or 300 wholesale in, and went from that to earning her card in a couple days, and just gave birth to her first child like not that long ago. So that's a really inspiring story. So I just want you to know big things can happen quickly. From the Letitia Cronin unit, she's leading by example with a book 15 and GenX Elite. Angie in her unit completed GenX. Gina Turner is a brand new red, and so is Sam Mosby. And she has 2 new seniors, Alyssa and Angie, both mother and daughter teams. So that's really exciting. So yay for Letitia's unit. From the Heather Irby unit, we have Jennifer Howard completing a GenX Elite, Betsy Brim doing GenX Elite. Jennifer moved up to future director, and Keisha Hicks moved up to new future director, which is pretty exciting. A lot of movement there in the Heather Irby unit. From the Stephanie Herms unit, she led by example with GenX Elite, and Jessie Hood also leading by example with a book 10 and a GenX. So congrats to you guys. From the April Hutchinson unit, a lot going on in April's unit. She is leading by example by a book 11 and GenX. And then we've got Rachel Tomaszewski, who moved into DIQ. And she also has a book 14, and she completed Gen X. Randy Dooley has a book 12. Kristen Turner has a book 12. Randy also completed Gen X. So did Sheena and Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth actually completed Gen X Elite, and Sheena completed Gen X. So congrats to you guys. Elizabeth is now on target for her car and moved through to her final month of DIQ. Brandy Kane and Erica Messer and Sarah Stjalberg and Bridget Bell, 4 new seniors in the April Hutchinson unit. So well done. In the Christina King unit, Christina herself has a book 15, and then Megan is a new senior. And this is what's awesome. Kat Taylor, you guys, went from senior to DIQ and on target for her car with over 8,000 in production. She went from senior to DIQ in like a couple of days. I mean, it was just amazing. So Kat, well done. Way to finish in abundance. She had almost twice the amount of production she needed to have and did it in a couple of days. So that's really remarkable. Melissa Linton leading by example with a book 10 and Gen X. Samantha McGregor is a new senior and also completed Gen X. Anisha Maroney leading by example with Gen X Elite, and Jessica, is it Uresti? I'm sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly. Jessica Yu completed Gen X. Janie Myers is a brand new sales director, offspringing out of the Jenny Rayleigh unit, making Jenny a senior director, which is really exciting. In Janie's unit, she already has Emily Williams as a new senior. She did Gen X Elite and did a bronze medal. She completed a bronze medal, adding 3 new last month, which is awesome. And Janie's leading by example with the book 11. From the Amber Nichols unit, also leading by example with a book 13 and completed Gen X. Tanya Cummins completed a book 10 and Gen X and is also in DIQ. Chrissy Cummins completed Gen X and is in DIQ. And Tanya Lovelace completed Gen X and is in DIQ. And Pam Cunninger moved from Future Director to DIQ. So that's kind of crazy. Actually, Tanya Cummins is not in DIQ. I'm sorry, it's Chrissy Cummins in DIQ. But Tanya is busting it like crazy. So, Tanya, you're doing amazing stuff, too. So, that's pretty exciting. Amanda Nyman completed Gen X Elite and bronze medal last month. So, well done. In the Jenny Rayleigh unit, not only did she debut Janie Myers as a new sales director, but Jenny has a book 10, completed Gen X. Gabby Chick completed a book 10 and Gen X. And then, as we know, Janie did Gen X Elite. She gold medaled, adding 5, and Emily Williams in her unit did Gen X Elite and bronze medal by adding 3. And then in the Corey Fuller unit, Corey leading by example with a book 10 and Gen X Elite, and then Annette Vonderheide in DIQ, book 13 and completed Gen X. So I'm really excited about all of the really good stuff that we have going on in our area. Now, I wanted to do a little bit of training on finishing strong and what finishing strong looks like. You know, you find yourself here in the month of June, and now where we are with it being June the 12th, you know, you can find yourself in one of two places. Either you're totally fully in the game and you're fully invested, or you could be in a spot where you're just like kind of deferring down to, well, and just sort of like letting things lie, either waiting for July 1st to get started or literally deferring down into lower level. And so let me kind of explain a little bit about that. Sometimes people ask me, how do you believe? Like, how do you just believe in a goal when you just don't see it? And I think that there's, if anything, I want you to see this as a mental exercise in how to, in a way how to think. And like I said, this is good training, right? Because you can use this way of thinking in other areas of your life. I mean, really, it's like a mental training exercise. So you've heard me say before, you know, finishing strong is a learned skill. Well, it is. And if it's a learned skill, what that means is it's not just for some people. It's not like some people come out of the womb and they already, you know how to finish strong. It really is a learned skill. And I think that when you start learning how to finish something small, like finish an hour well or finish a day well, then you can finish a week well, and then you start finishing a month well, and that can go into finishing a year well. Does that make sense? So you start small with learning how to finishing well, and it really is a mindset. And so if I ask you right now, so what's your big audacious goal? And you're like, oh, it's blah, 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 blah. And whatever blah, 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 that might sound like the right answer, right? It might be the thing that you said last year at this time. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go for. And now maybe it seems really far away and not that motivating, frankly, because it's so big, it shuts you down. And then if I said, well, what's like your non-negotiable goal? Like, what's the goal that you're like, okay, that's great, but I'm not going to fall below this. Okay, what is that? Okay, so whatever that is, that's actually the real goal. Like the lower level goal that I say, what's your non-negotiable? That's actually the real goal. Crazy, isn't it? But it's true, because when we have the non-negotiable goal, the goal that we're like, no matter what, I'm not falling below this. Then what happens is your brain starts to go into like problem solving mode of how can I do that? How can we complete that? How is that possible? You start brainstorming, how you can help make that happen. But that's actually the real goal. And so how do you get out of that? And how do you raise your belief into thinking the higher level goal? Well, the higher level pie in the sky goal is like the ceiling goal, the top goal, and then the non-negotiable, but I'm not going to fall below. That is the floor goal. And what you've really got to do is make the floor goal the ceiling goal. Like the floor and the ceiling goal need to match. Meaning whatever that is, the stretch goal, the thing that you're going for, even if it's not the original pie in the sky goal, even if it's something that would just stretch you, that you also can't see that either, but it's at least motivating enough that you're at least going to take an action on it, you're at least going to go for it. Whatever that is, you then have to decide in your mind, okay, that is not going to be, like I'm not going to defer down out of that. That's going to be the goal. And every time that you catch yourself thinking, well, it's fine if we don't hit that. As long as I just hit this, I'm okay. That's deferring down, almost deferring down into, I don't even want to say mediocrity, but it's letting yourself off the hook. And one of the best things that I think you can do, I don't have one on me, but if I had like a rubber band or like a stretchy bracelet, what I would do, like as an exercise, is to wear that stretchy bracelet on one arm or one wrist. And every time you catch yourself thinking, well, it's okay if I just hit something lower, you just transfer it from the left to the right. And then every time you catch yourself thinking that, you transfer it from the right to left. You just go back and forth all day long, transferring it from wrist to wrist. And I think what that does is, awareness is 90% of it. Just being aware you're even thinking that way. And then once you're aware of it, then you can go and try to replace that with a higher level thought or a better thought. But you can't replace it unless you're aware you're thinking it, right? And so that's such a great tangible thing to go back and forth every time that you think that. And you can't help it if it comes across your mind. Like you can't help that it enters your head, but you can decide if you choose to stay there or if you choose to replace that with a higher and better thought. Okay, so that's one way I think that you can really help to transform your thinking. If anything, I just want you to find something that you are excited about that you can stretch. The next couple of days we have the end of the star quarter, right? We have that coming up on Monday, I think. And so is there something over the weekend that you could just do that would make you really proud? Remember, to finish a year well, it starts with just learning how to finish a day well. So let's just try to finish the weekend well. Okay. The other thing I think that I want you to take into account, and I do want to say that my faith that I have in God is something that I cannot separate from who I am. And so if it just comes out, I'm sorry, but it's just going to come out because this is my worldview and this is how I think. And I know Linda Tupin would always say the difference between someone that makes $4,000 a month and someone that makes $40,000 a month is the way they think, right? And so this is the way that I think. In 2 Chronicles 16:2, that scripture says, "For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him." And I just believe God sees faith. I do. I think He sees your faith. Like He knows your heart. And He knows your faith. And if you have a dream in your heart, it's a God-given dream. I mean, as long as it aligns with, God's purposes, if it's a dream in your heart, most likely He's the author of that dream. And so I just think when you put your heart over the line and you do the actions anyway, you do the work anyway, just fully believing that God sees that, then I just think that He honors that. Now, that's not to say name it and claim it. It's not to say, if you just believe it's going to happen. But I think that God blesses us in different ways. Sometimes He blesses us tangibly with the actual goal being met, and sometimes He blesses us intangibly, like where we don't have an outward evidence of the blessing, but there's something on the inside of us that changes. And I think that's why sometimes when in the past, as my faith has grown in what's possible, I think that's why sometimes I can just believe things will happen, because I've seen little things happen, then I've seen medium-sized things happen, then I've seen huge things that blow my mind. So I know what's possible, and so therefore I can work towards something even though I don't see the result of it. But I think if anything, sometimes God just blesses you on the inside by growing you as a person and growing your faith. And sometimes not sometimes, I would say oftentimes, that's a much better reward than the actual prize. Does that make sense? I hope that's kind of coming together there. The other thing is, the evidence of faith in Hebrews is working towards the unseen. And that's what faith is. And I remember this last weekend at the NSD2B event, NSD Leah Lachlan, she was saying that sometimes people in June, they say, well, I just can't see it. And she said, I just want to retort and go, well, duh. Of course you can't see it. You're not supposed to see it. That's what faith is all about. And it's so true. So my philosophy has always been that there's a healthy tension between God's sovereignty and man's responsibility. So I think sometimes, like I live in Kentucky in the Bible Belt, sometimes I'll hear people say, well, if it's God's will, then, and I just want to shake them and go, well, yes, if it's God's will, but you have to do something. Like, you have to do your part too. And I think that at the end of the day, like at the end of, July 1st, June 30th, more importantly than hitting the goal is I just want you to wake up on July 1st and say, you know what? I gave it my best. I gave it my all. And because I gave it my best, then therefore I can be okay with whatever the result is. Whether it was what I wanted to be or not, I can be okay. And I remember years ago, I don't know what year it was, maybe 2006, 2007, my goal for years as a sales director was always the same. And I missed the goal for 6 or 7 years in a row. And I kept going for the same goal. It was the goal of earning the top director trip. Now, it's not about sending me and my husband on a vacation. The trip for me, I didn't care if we went to Gatlinburg. The trip for me was more about my circle of influence. And I knew that if I could have friends meet the other top sales directors in this company, that my brain and my mind would be expanded. So if I could expand my circle of girlfriends, I knew that I could lead my people better and I could think bigger and higher. That's what that trip was about. It wasn't about a vacation, although that was nice. And I remember back in 2006 or 7, and we were mid-June, and I remember I took a trip to Alabama to support a hotshot in my unit. And while we worked for 2 or 3 days together and did lots and lots of activity, and while it was productive, I just felt in my heart that it wasn't coming together. Now, I think probably more likely what happened is probably there were like 1 or 2 people who said they were going to join and who didn't, or an order fell through, or just 2 or 3 things in a row happened that didn't go the way that I had expected they would go. And I remember I drove from Alabama to Kentucky, which is like a solid 8 hours. I drove for 8 hours and I cried the entire time. Now, not only did I cry, but I had like my iPod and I was like playing music that like touched my heartstrings. And do you know when you play music that makes you cry? Kind of like when you're crying and then you want to stay in cry mode. And I kept playing songs that would make me cry. And I just sobbed and sobbed. And what I was sobbing over was kind of like the death of a dream, where I felt like I'd worked really hard that year. And here it is mid-June, about this time of the month. And I was basically throwing in the towel. The other thing I was doing is I was writing the email. I was pre-writing the email that I was going to send on July 1st to my unit to inform them that we did not hit the goal. Now, in looking back, I'm not very proud of that story. I'm actually kind of ashamed of it, but just to be fully transparent, I want to ask you, have you ascribed to any of that thinking where you're like already planning to fail, essentially? Like, I look back and I'm like so mad at myself that I gave in the towel the middle of June. I mean, what could have happened had I said, no, we're going to go for it anyway. I don't care if we hit it or not. We're going for it. I mean, the worst thing that could have happened is I would have gotten farther along than I would have had I given up, right? We could have beat our best month ever. We could have placed higher in the Shaw area. We could have seen what we're really made of. I could have been a better example for my people, right? To say, I'm not going to give up no matter what. I mean, those are some of the benefits that could have happened for me keeping going. Now, I'm not talking about working to the bone and exhausting yourself. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about like giving it my all. Like I could have at least finished proud, you know. Instead, me, Julia Burnett, I spent 15 days sucking my thumb, walking around like a zombie and deciding it wasn't happening. I just can't believe I thought that. So fast forward a few years to 2009, we're in the exact same place, needed maybe a little bit less wholesale to finish the trip. But that year, my mindset was totally different. It was like, I don't care if we have 2,000 in and we need 50,000. We're doing it. And it's like people came out of the woodwork to help and support. I mean, like people I didn't even know were buying Mary Kay product from me. Not people who had Mary Kay consultants, but what I'm saying is people who, someone said, hey, oh my gosh, this girl is earning a trip to Rome and you've got to help her. And people like literally coming out of the woodwork to order from me. I mean, I remember I sold $2,000 or $3,000 in like 2 days. And that was back in the day before customer delivery service. I think we had like over 50 orders, like boom, 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 all lined up 2 or 3 rows deep in my office to get ready to mail those bad boys out. But it was because I was sold out that I didn't care if it happened or not, but I was going to go to bed on June 30th knowing I did every single possible thing to that I could do within my controllables, to do my part to make that happen. And one other thing Leah said was, our job is to control the controllables and let God do his job to control the uncontrollables. And what are our controllables? Our controllables are our attitude, our activity, our action, how we choose to respond to people. You ultimately cannot control if someone cancels or changes their mind or doesn't follow through. You can influence it, but you can't ultimately control it. But you can control how many people you connect with and your excitement. And I like to see June as like a big Monopoly game, almost like, I want to see how this is going to come together. Almost like a joyful thing. Almost like I'm intrigued, like waking up in June and going, wow, I can't wait to see how it's going to come together, instead of this heavy, like, I mean, who wants to do any kind of business with somebody who's like totally so serious? Like people want to connect with and they want to say yes to you when you're like fun and lighthearted and airy, and it's like, woo, how's this going to come together? This is crazy, but we're going to do it. That's the kind of mindset that I want you to have in the month of June. So just to wrap this up, what I want to say is that yes, finishing strong is a learned skill. I want you to see this as a faith-building exercise the last, 18, 20 days of the month of June. I want you to know that sometimes the blessings that you get are not the actual, it doesn't come down, it never comes down the way that you think it's going to come down, like never. Like in 13 years of Mary Kay, it's never once finished the way that I thought it was going to come. And so you got to keep it fun and make it light and airy and exciting. But think of this as sometimes the blessing is going to be on the inside of you, like who you become along the way. It's more about that and less about the actual thing that you're going for. And the other thing I want to share with you is that, to control the controllables, which write down on a piece of paper, what are the controllables? What are the things that are not in your control? And there's actually a lot not in your control. And the final thing I want to say is I want to read to you a story that Leah actually shared this last weekend at the NSD2B event, and it really struck a chord with me. And I feel like it's very poignant, and you may hear this in the future in some type of training that I do. But it's from former President Jimmy Carter. And he wrote a book called Why Not the Best? And this is where the title that book came from. And he said for many years, Admiral Rickover, he was the head of the U.S. Nuclear Navy. And if you're like a Navy person, most Navy people have heard of him. He was kind of accredited for really strengthening the U.S. Navy. And for many years, every officer aboard a nuclear submarine was personally interviewed and approved by Admiral Rickover. Among them was former President Jimmy Carter, who years ago applied for service under him. In his account of his interview, he said, I had applied for the nuclear submarine program, and Admiral Rickover was interviewing me for the job. It was the first time I'd ever met him, and we sat in a very large conference room by ourselves for more than 2 hours, and he let me choose any subjects I wished to discuss. Very carefully, I chose those about which I knew the most about, which were like current events, seamanship, music, literature, naval tactics, electronics, gunnery, and he began to ask me a series of questions of increasing difficulty. In each instance, he soon proved that I knew relatively little about the subject that I had chosen. He always looked right into my eyes, and he never smiled. Can you imagine? I was saturated with cold sweat. Finally, he asked a question, and I thought I could redeem myself, and he said, "How did you stand in your class at the Naval Academy?" Since I had completed my sophomore year at Georgia Tech before entering Annapolis, I had actually done very well, and I swelled my chest with pride, and I answered, "Sir, I stood 59th in a class of 820. I sat back to wait for the congratulations, which never came, and instead the question was, "Did you do your best?" I started to say, "Well, yes, sir," but then I remembered who this was. And I recalled several of the many times at the academy when I could have learned more about our allies. I could have learned more about our enemies and our weapons, the strategy, and so forth. You know, I was just human. And I finally gulped and I said, "No, sir, I didn't always do my best." And he looked at me for a long time, and then he turned his chair around to end the interview. And he asked one final question, for which I've never been able to forget or to answer. And he said, "Why not?" And I sat there for a while, shaken, and then I slowly left the room. And as I've said many times before, I feel like part of my mode as your National Sales Director in Mary Kay is to develop the holistic woman. And I want to help to create and invite an area of women and men who absolutely give their best every single day. I'm not talking about frantic, work you to the bone. I'm just talking about being present to the moment. And when it's time to be with your kids, you're with your kids. When it's time to be with your parents, you're with your parents. When it's time to be with friends, you're mentally with your friends. And when it's time to work in your Mary Kay, you're with Mary Kay. I want to invite you to give your very best. And even if up to this point you feel like you have not given your best, from today, Friday, June 12th, until June the 30th, I want you to be able to wake up on July 1st, and if I said, "Did you give your best?" regardless of if you hit the goal or not, I want you to be able to say yes, instead of having to ask the question, "Why not?" And I think if you can finish June 30th and say, "You know what? I gave my very best," then no matter where we end up, I think that you're going to be really pleased and proud of yourself. So gals, I want you to know that our first year in Pearl seminar, we were number 9, the number 9 national area. Our second year, we were the number 8 national area. And this year, my total goal, my total dream is to be in the top 7. Because I'm telling you what, the first 6 are repeating inner circle national areas. You know, last year, there was only one national sales director between the inner circle areas and between us. And this year, I want it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and area 7 is the Revolution National Area. I want to be right in there with them, and I really believe that we can. But we can't do that without all of us pulling together and giving our very, very best. So, you guys, here's to you. I love you guys. Thank you. Get registered for seminar.